Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. It is time to start this wonderful dialogue that is hosted by the Achieving Together Black Women's Affinity Group. And today, for this quarter, our topic is elevating and celebrating Black women's voices. I'm really excited about this panel discussion as well as our presenter today and talking about elevating and celebrating Black women's voices. Last year in 2020 was the year of the woman. And of course, we definitely went through some trying times last year, and even, with dealing with COVID-19 as well as post COVID-19 in 2021. And so we really wanted to, for this particular dialogue today, we really wanted to talk about Black women in leadership, particularly in the area of work that we are in when it comes to the HIV workforce, but not just the HIV workforce, but us being in leadership and elevating our voices in any area that we are working in. So this morning, we are going to be discussing, again, as I said, elevating and celebrating Black women's voices. My name is Shatera Johnson. I'm a licensed master social worker here in Texas, because I do know we have some people that are far and wide that is joining us today. And we really are excited about the capacity and the expansion that we've been able to do over the last year as it relates to the Black Women's Affinity Group through the Achieving Together to End HIV in Texas plan. Last year, at the end of 2020, we all came together as a partnership and decided to really construct and put together some dynamic dialogue series that we coined the phrase DYK Dialogues. Did you know dialogues? We wanted to provide topics to women across Texas and even beyond Texas in regards to HIV and Black women. It's a very important topic. And so we started off and we decided to do quarterly series. We started off at the beginning, at the top of this year, with Nothing About Us Without Us. And it was, or is for us. And this was a dialogue series that focused on addressing medical mistrust in the Black community, HIV, COVID research, and the representation of Black women, how to identify good medical research. And this was in partnership with all of us, with Dr. Mandy Hill, as well as we expanded our scope and had a panel discussion with leaders of the Divine Nine sororities, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Zeta Phi Beta, and Sigma Gamma Rho sororities. So that was in February. And that was also a good time because it was Black History Month, and and it was coming off of that year of COVID and being quarantined and dealing with the COVID-19 vaccine. So we really wanted to have some really engaging dialogue in regards to Black women, Black people, the Black community as it relates to research. So it was definitely an on-time series. Then 3 months later, we had a wonderful presentation, Thriving, Strong, Resilient Black Women Taking Action to End HIV and Mental Health Stigma. This dialogue was a panel discussion with Ms. Lynn, Ms. Porter, and Ms. Samuel in regard, and also Shadon McCants, who talked about the importance of understanding our mental health and the stigma around mental health as it relates to Black women in HIV prevention, HIV care, and HIV support. This was a very dynamic, and this was also during May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. This was a dynamic series that really opened up discussion, real girlfriend to girlfriend discussion in regards to mental health and the importance of us taking care of our mental health, but also in taking care of our mental health, breaking down that stigma in order to make sure that we are stable and doing what we need to do in order to take care of ourselves as Black women. Then in August, we had our 40 years later. And this series was talking about Black women's reflections on living with HIV. This was a discussion with Black women in Texas on the 40th anniversary of the first HIV case in the US. And it was a dynamic, we had a dynamic series. We had a spectrum of Black women living with HIV, that spoke on their journey, their path, where they see themselves moving forward, in the advocacy around HIV prevention, care, and support, in regards to Black women, and where we were at 40 years ago and where we're at 40 years later. And so today we are talking about and leaving off this year with, um, elevating and celebrating Black women's voices in leadership. We know that there are a lot of Black women, in the state of Texas, that are in these leadership capacities in the HIV field, right? And we wanted to talk to Black women about their journey. We wanted to talk to these Black women leaders about the work that they do and how do they just keep it all together. Me personally, I've been in the HIV field for almost 15 years, and sometimes I find myself going through this roller coaster, right? It feels like this never ending roller coaster. We have these highs and then we have some lows sometimes, and then we go back to high and then we kind of go back low. And it can be stressful sometimes. But for some reason, something keeps me in this work. And I think it's the dedication, and trying to elevate people living with HIV, trying to educate people, how to, prevent, contracting HIV, or even just talking to people about positive sexual health, Black women about positive sexual health. These are things that drives, why we continue to be in these capacities, in these roles as Black women in the HIV workforce here. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation today. In the chat, I would like for people to tell me. I know you put in the chat, that what you do, but how long have you been in the HIV field? So I want you to put how many years you've been in. And I see Miss Helen Turner put 37 years AIDS survivor. Yes, ma'am. How long have you been in the HIV field? 30 years. Okay. Miss Dina Hughes, how you doing? 30 years, my 15, 20 years. Okay. All right, 8 years, 29 years, 21 years, 5 years. All right, so we have a, gamut of different, times of people coming to the HIV field and their duration in the HIV field. So I think we're going to get some really good conversation going on today. At this time, I really want to start our presentation off with our keynote speaker. And our keynote speaker today is Dr. Retanya Reynolds. She is a tenure faculty at the School of Social Work, Psychology, and Philosophy at Texas Women's University in Denton, Texas. She is also the Grace Project Program Coordinator at Legacy Cares, formerly Legacy Counseling Center in Dallas, Texas. Dr. Reynolds has 25 years of experience promoting healthy living and positive life choices, among women and girls living with HIV. Her research focuses on mental health and support services from women living with HIV. Her background includes community outreach, substance abuse counseling, case management, professional training, and consulting with state and federal offices. And I would like to say that I sat on one of Dr. Reynolds' presentation at the Professional Association of Social Workers, and HIV conference back in, I believe it was maybe DC. And when I say she is so knowledgeable, in the realm of the work that she does when it comes to women and girls, living with HIV, I was just in awe when I was sitting in her presentation. And I remember coming up to her like, I heard you was from Texas, and where are you at? And just from then on, I seen her at different conferences, and I was just so enthused to hear the work that she's doing, even through the Grace Project conference that's held every year. The work that she's doing with women and girls when it comes to HIV. She's a true leader in the HIV workforce here in Texas. So at this time, I would like for Dr. Reynolds to start her presentation. She can share her screen and we will get right into it. She is going to be leading this conversation into what we're going to talk about with our panelists in regards to elevating our Black voices.
Good morning, everyone. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Shatara, for that introduction. You just never know who's watching and who's listening. I just want to start by saying welcome and thank everyone for being here. I'm really honored, I think, to I know, honored to do this presentation for you. And I am a little nervous, but that's natural. I've been doing this a long time and I still get shaky. So if I'm shaky right now, but we'll be all right. Shatara stopped in the middle of my introduction to give me flowers, and I really do appreciate that. The last couple of lines of what I submitted stated that I have been living with HIV since 1997. And I began this journey of advocacy and education and support networks and all of that in 1997. Because in 1997, there were not many little Black girls, church girls, college girls who were being diagnosed and had a community or a cohort to look to for support, to get questions answered. It was still very much a gay man's disease. And even though there were women, more and more women being diagnosed during that time, we weren't necessarily easy to find. And so in trying to find my tribe per se, I joined another tribe and then ended up developing our own tribe. I remember asking around and trying to find out, because when I first started taking my medications, I experienced a lot of side effects, a lot of strange and different side effects, and things that affected my physique, affected my body shape and my body image. And I don't care who you are or where you come from, a 20-year-old Black girl losing her hips and gaining a belly when she wasn't pregnant was just something you needed help to deal with. It wasn't something you could just march on by yourself. And so support for women living with HIV and mental health services and mental health care has been my main focus for the entirety of my career. And I feel blessed and purposed in that it has allowed me to further my career simply in doing what I believe is my reasonable service to do. I know what I needed and didn't have at the time. And so I feel, I know that I have a call to develop and have those things available for women when they need them. So I'm only supposed to do about 15 minutes, so I'm gonna move right on into it. I titled this session, "The Value of Your Voice." Because we are talking about women in leadership, and particularly Black women in leadership, it's interesting when Mukam, some of you probably know Mukam, when she told me that they would like for me to do this, I don't think I've ever actually considered myself to be a woman in leadership. It's just something that I've always done, and it really gave me a different perspective on the work that I do. So I want to just talk to you a little bit about the value of your voice. Whether you're in leadership or not, we all have a voice. And sometimes it's real easy to feel like that voice is stifled, particularly when you are in the minority. And we know that working in this field for years, women have had to struggle and fight to get the same measure of service, the same measure of support that men living with HIV have received over the years. I remember being in committee meetings and council meetings saying the boys have a house over here and a building over here to do their extracurricular activities, and all we get is a conference room one night a week. And how come it's not services for women like y'all have all this stuff for men, you know? And so it's obvious that there's a time to raise your voice and speak out when it's necessary. For a lot of us, it's not necessarily that easy. And whether you are speaking and fighting or you're remaining silent and still doing the work, it can be taxing. It can be very taxing. And I can say for a whole lot of us, if you don't do anything else, get some rest. Rest. Stop for a minute. It'll all be there when you come back, I promise you. Stop for a minute, get some rest. So my first slide is to recharge. Because we do get burnout. I had a question on here, I took it off, and it said, are you motivated or are you burnt? Because I know I spend a lot of days in my office and I'm here until 6 or 7 o'clock. And if anybody calls me, is why are you still in office? It's like I'm about to go because I'm burnt. It's something I say because I know when I'm done, when I'm depleted. And we have to be careful to not allow ourselves to get depleted. You can get tired, that's fine. You can empty yourself for a cause or purpose, for your job, for your family, your loved ones, or what have you, but you have to make sure that you re-energize, that you recharge. And so just some key points, this slide, I was starting to create a graphic for it just to get my ideas down. And then I found this and I said, this is way better than what I can come up with because it's got everything on it. So if you want to take a minute to just review the slide and the different ways that we use our energy, from work to home to children to other people around us, emotional loads, financial worries, all of those things draw energy from us. They use our energy, but then we can also recharge by being alone, being quiet, watch TV, eat, whatever you need to do to recharge. I encourage you to do it. I mean, these 3 key things can help. Build a support system of people you can go to for help or advice. You don't have to go to them every week, every day, but have a support system of people that you trust so that when you do need help, you can get it. Also find a mentor that you trust and respect to talk to them about what's causing your burnout. I have a mentor, and I actually talked to them about a week ago because this was coming up. The Grace Project Conference is coming up this weekend. I have something else coming up the week after that. And I was like, I think I'm losing my mind. I have all these things to do, but I'm going crazy. And they were there for that moment in time to just say, okay, look, let's prioritize. What do you need to do? What can you not do? I canceled the trip because I really didn't need to do it. It was like I was just going to go, you know, because it was paid for, but I really didn't need to do it. And it was putting extra stress on me. But I wouldn't have allowed that thought to enter my mind if my mentor hadn't brought it to me. So sometimes it's good to have somebody that you can talk to about the things that may be stressing you. And also take time to recharge, whatever that means to you. I like to eat. Eating is my happy place. I'm an emotional eater and I know it. I don't want Noom. I don't want cognitive behavioral therapy to tell me to stop eating the things that I like because I know they make me happy. And that's what it is. I also use food as an indicator because I love to cook. And if I look around and I have a whole lot of takeout containers and I know that I haven't cooked this week, I need to do a check because cooking makes me happy. If I'm not cooking, then something's off. That's my indicator. It's like, oh, you need to fix it. I don't know what it is. Find out what it is that brings you joy. It could be anything. Some of you may hike and love things like hiking, going to the spa, getting your nails and your feet done, whatever it is. If that's what you enjoy, find time for it, so that you can keep your energy level at a in a position where you can stay productive, even when you rest. Because when you rest and then work from rest, you're more productive. Sometimes we have the idea that we should work and then rest. But if we rest and then work, we can produce so much more. So take care of yourself. That's my first tip for you. Take care of yourself. Um, and then there's the issue of staying involved. I've been in this since the beginning. Since the beginning for me. Since the beginning for me, I've done this work on many different levels, and on several occasions I've wanted to quit just because I want to be. I always say it like this: I want to be like regular people. I want to wake up in the morning and not have to think about this and just live a regular people life. And that also included not taking any meds. My relationship with my meds was like this for years, until my doctor was like, you need to make a choice. You could do one of them because the end is inevitable, depending on your choice. And I made a choice. And so it stopped the wishy-washy. But wanting to quit is normal. Wanting to quit is a part of the process. If you've never wanted to quit, I question what exactly you are doing. Because when you're really in it, sometimes it's hard and you want to stop. The picture says, don't stop when you're tired, stop when you're done. And at some point, I applaud Lisa, who is moving on to something else. And before we began, she said this was her first job, not in the field of HIV. I don't know if I'll ever have a job where I'm not doing something related to this. But I do know there are some things that are still left for me to do. And until I do those, I know that I'm not going to be moving on to other things. So how to stay involved and stay engaged. Use your experience and empathy to make an impact. Every one of us has a life experience. Every one of us has an experience that we can use to be impactful in this work. Also use your empathy. If you walked in the shoes of the women around you, whether they've been diagnosed a long time, a short time, or not diagnosed at all, simply an ally, then you can still use that to make an impact. Also know that your voice makes a difference. Sometimes when you say the same thing over and over again, it feels like you're not being heard. There was a season when I was like, I'm not sitting on another committee. I've done all the committee meetings I'm going to do, because these arguments around the table are the same. They were the same in 1999 and they still argued about the same thing. So I'm not doing nothing else. I'll find something else to do. Even when that happens, understand your voice makes a difference because people are listening. People are listening. Shatera, you're not the first person to approach me and say, oh, I was in your session way back when. And then it makes me question, well, what did I say? I'm scared I might have said something. But thankfully, it sounds like it was all right. But know that your voice makes a difference. And also, we have to stay in the conversation. You would think that after 40 years, and after all of what we've done, the people on this panel, the people who are watching this, after all the work that's been done, that people would be more knowledgeable on a larger scale about prevention, about stigma, about services. But that's not so. That's not so. There's still so many people who need the information. They might not want it, but they need it. Because I don't know about you all, but in my experience, people don't seek out this information until it hits home, until it hits them or someone they love. someone they know, and then they're on Google trying to figure everything out and want to join a meeting or go to a group. But the general public per se, that this has not touched directly, not looking for, let me see what I can find out and do for HIV today. They're not doing that. So the conversation has to continue. We have to stay engaged in order to make a difference. People tell me when people find out about my status, because it's not on my Facebook page or nothing like that. Because I've been doing this a long time. So, but when people find out about my status at this point, I hear them say things like, "Oh, you're the bravest person I know," because they know about everything else that I do and think, "Oh, you're doing that on top of this." But it's not, for me, it's not about being brave or anything like that. It's that we need to be open and have these conversations. And I guess I'm delighted to be the first person you know, but I'm wondering how come I'm the first person that you know. So rest when you need to rest. Rest when you need to rest because we need you to continue. But don't stop just because you're tired. Stop when you're done, not just because you're tired. The next slide, uplifting our tribe, keeping one another uplifted. I love this photo. I absolutely love this photo. This photo was taken at Legacy Care's reveal party. Legacy Counseling Center recently changed its name to Legacy Cares in September of this year. And they had to step and repeat. So we were all lined up to take our pictures. That's me on the end in the red. The young lady next to me is, she's probably been diagnosed maybe 2 years. She's out, so I can say that. Powerful advocate, powerful voice. She works for a different agency. She don't work for Legacy. She volunteers sometimes, but she don't work for Legacy. She was there at our event to support. There's Sati. Some of you know Sati. She is in the picture too. She don't work for Legacy either. She works for a different organization, but she was there to support. And that's Brooke on the end. Brooke is the associate executive director at Legacy Cares and will be the executive director to succeed our current director. And there is no beef between us as Black women. Nobody's vying for the spot. Nobody's in competition because we don't want, I'm the only person here or what have you. None of that is happening. So uplifting our tribe, if we want to consider ourselves a tribe of Black women who are doing this work, the first thing we have to do is let go of toxic thinking and find people we can trust. We've all been hurt one way or the other, whether in work relationships or personal relationships, but we have to let go of toxic thinking related to one another. The next thing is to identify our needs and then link up with the people who can help. We are so often siloed doing this work. And sometimes we even get territorial because we have this service and we got this brand and y'all can't take our clients and y'all can't take our ladies. I know when I first moved back to North Texas, I'm from Dallas. When I first moved back up here, I was initiating a research study and was amazed at the number of contacts that I made where people were like, what do you want to do with our women? I'm sorry, I'm seeking individuals with autonomy and who can make decisions for themselves. You don't need your permission to be my study. I didn't say that. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, if this is here to help the women that you claim to serve, why are you putting up these barriers around it? And I've seen that a lot over the years. I've seen it a lot. I still see it. And I think it's something that needs to stop. I'm saying that publicly here. That needs to stop because we do need to link up. We do need each other. And just because your agency provides one service does not mean that your client doesn't need services from another agency. I'm sorry, it doesn't mean that because some of our women need a lot. I need a lot. And I don't want anybody keeping me from it. So the next bullet, be open and reach out. With a lot of times we don't want to admit that we need help, that we need assistance, that we need partnership. We want it to appear as if we have it all together and that we have everything we need. And that doesn't help us grow. That limits us. So be open and reach out. And then spread messages of self-care and having faith in our abilities. We have to have faith in what we're able to accomplish with or without the assistance of a system. You can get further with resources, but resources come through relationships. Resources come through relationships. The key point related to our tribe and how we lift each other up is that this is our story and we need to ensure we narrate it as we see fit. But we can only narrate our story when we do it together. So sometimes you have to bring your guard down. Sometimes you have to bring your guard down in order to let things in. When leadership doesn't look like us, I can honestly say throughout my career, actually right now, currently at the university is the first time that I've had leadership that wasn't majority and male. I worked for white people my whole life. And not just white people, Hispanics as well. The leadership that I've worked for and with throughout my career has not looked very much like me. I have had numerous colleagues around the table that looked like me, but not necessarily in forms of leadership. And when we talk about phenotype and what looks like us, we're really just talking about race, but it's a social reality, and race colors our perceptions, it colors our interactions, it colors our relationships. And when it comes to doing the work, I think this piece of data is very important. This statement came from a piece from Ospina and Foldy. It says a collective identity is a mechanism that may help us transcend our personal interests and perform beyond expectations. So what if your leadership don't look like you? Yes, we need more women of color in positions of leadership. If your goal is to work for the good of your community and the people that you serve, you do that out of your own call to service. You don't despise it or not do it because of who's sitting at the head of the table, if that makes sense. And I say that because even though it's 40 years later and women are still fighting for funding and services and programming specific to us, prevention specific to Black women. Some of the same systems that were in place in the 80s are still in place. We're still having to not beg, but implore those with funding to inject more resources into our communities for us. If leadership doesn't look like us, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, and you're absolutely welcome to disagree with me. I really don't feel like that's our problem. Because when you want to serve as an advocate, as an educator, I'm a researcher with the goal of empowering the people that look like me and to have them act positively about their health, especially people living with HIV. Whoever's signing the checks isn't a part of that. It's not a part of that. It's about our own work with one another. It becomes a more of a horizontal exchange as opposed to a vertical type of impact. I'm not negating, again, I'll say we need more people of color in leadership. We need more women in leadership, but the work on the ground with the people, that's on you. That's on you if you choose to do it. I'm gonna give you just a quick story and then I'm gonna move on. I know that even preparing for the Grace Project Conference, and I believe in getting your money. I'm gonna talk about telling your story in a minute. I believe in getting your money because organizations like to use our stories to get funding and get supporters and things like that, and they need that. But I don't believe in being exploited for your story, and I know that absolutely happens. But in planning the Grace Project conference and looking for speakers, I've run into really good, strong speakers that I've invited to come, but we couldn't afford their fees. I'm not mad at you. Get your money. I'm not mad at all. I'm not mad at you. At the same time, we have women who need your stories. We have women that need to see you, that need to know that there's somebody that looks like them, that has a similar experience, that's moving along and doing well. They need to see that. Like, we need to see that. I facilitated a support group. I was invited to facilitate a support group that ran for about 9 years consistently. And I was not an employee. Nobody paid me to do it. I felt that that was my call to do because I knew what those women needed. And had I declined because they didn't offer me any money, I know without a shadow of a doubt that either a staff person would have been running those groups that would have left in a year, or an intern would have been running those groups that left in 6 months, or somebody else would have came in without the will and desire to be there for the women that needed me to be there. So I'll say it again, get your money. I'm not gonna tell anybody to get their money, but you have to weigh out, is this check more important than what these women need? Because sometimes when you get stuff for free, you get what you pay for. So for anybody who's watching this, and you find yourself in that struggle, don't think about the system, because the system ain't gonna always be right. And it is never gonna give you what you're worth. My story is worth way more than they could ever give me. They'll never give you what you're worth. But there may be some women out there who need you. And you have to think about that. I implore you to think about that, because that's real. That's absolutely real. Know the value of your voice, your experience, your skills, and your perspective. Fitbit has a commercial out right now, and they ask the question, what's strong with me? Know where your strength is, and then use it to help your sisters. Almost done. Dealing with microaggressions. The little foxes spoil the vine. Microaggressions, little foxes. It's the little things, the things overlooked, that often spoil things of value. It takes work to maintain a good working relationship. So my tips to you on the microaggressions, because they will come, is to pick your battles, use discernment, and decide just how much that fight means to you. You can choose to let it go, because there will be many. And it can be emotionally draining for you to confront every time somebody says something discriminatory or offensive. It can absolutely be draining. At the same time, silence can cost you an emotional tax. It'll have you questioning if you have a right to feel offended, which you likely do. And also it reinforces a belief that you are not safe from identity devaluation. You're not safe from someone thinking that you're less than, or safe from thinking that they can make statements or imply things about who you are, how you are, what you are, without any type of repercussion. And so you have to make a decision. Do you respond immediately? Do you respond later? Which is more important? Is the issue more important, or is the relationship more important? I had a coworker once who I believe he made it his business to let me know that I wasn't worthy of the position that I was in. And it's so funny, because he was an HIV positive man. And he came in my office one day and he was like, "Hey, Dr. Tanya, I just want you to know I've been living with HIV for so many years and I have AIDS, blah, blah. And I said, me too. And he jumped back by 10 feet because he didn't expect me to say that. And he took every opportunity to throw something in. I was working on one of my interventions, and he said, well, I have HIV. Is this for me too? And I just had to explain to him, all the interventions developed so far have been for men. So I think you got enough. Can we have this one? You know, you'll have some people who may want to take those jabs, but you have to decide, is it worth it? Is it worth it every time? And a lot of those I let roll off my back because I knew he wasn't going to be there long. And he's gone and I'm still here. So that's just a story to be told. It didn't do much damage. So we just have to make those decisions because it's the little things. Sometimes you just have to let it roll off of your back to achieve the greater goal. Some of those things, these microaggressions, are the things that make you want to quit. Sometimes those are things that just have you tired. But sometimes you have to just let it go. Sometimes. And there is a time to confront it. But you make that choice of what's best for you, what's worth it. Is it worth it to confront it? Or do you ride it out? Because there's more to come. The little foxes spoil the vine. Don't let them spoil your vine. Catch them. Last but not least, sharing your story. How do you share your story? We all have a story to tell. Somebody wants to hear it. Whether we know it or believe it or not, it's not always easy disclosing and sharing your story, but when and how you do that, it's absolutely your choice. It's absolutely your choice. Your story is your own. You tell it when and how you choose. You be open about the things that you want to share, but it's also okay to keep part of your story too and for yourself. You don't have to tell everybody all the deep dark recesses in your soul. You get to keep some things to yourself because they're yours. You have autonomy over your story. It's also important to determine how sharing your story will help. What do you want to accomplish? Are you telling it to help somebody else or are you telling it to help yourself? That makes a difference. And most of all, I encourage you, if you are thinking about sharing your story and how to do it, write it down first. Write it down first because it'll let you recognize some patterns, behavioral patterns, your own and maybe other people involved in your story, and also the value of it. You'll be able to see once you write it down. And so I'll leave you with this quote. Is that I didn't learn to be quiet when I had an opinion. The reason they knew who I was is because I told them. Ursula Burns, the chairman and CEO of Xerox. There is value in our voices. Know who you are, know what you need, and then you choose when to speak and what to speak on. It's yours. You can use it as you please. So thank you all. I hope I didn't go over my time. I'm sure I did, and I apologize. But I'm gonna stop talking now and get Shatera. You can take it back and go on to the next.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reynolds, for that. You did go over your time, but we are very appreciative of the information that you provided to us, you know, the recharge, the staying involved, uplifting our tribe. I am a true advocate for mentorship and having a solid tribe for yourself because we need that. We need that in the work that we're doing. And you left off with talking about sharing your stories, which will segue into our next segment for this series. And that's going to be going into our panelists. And so, panelists, I hope you are ready to discuss and share your story as a Black woman in leadership in the work that you're doing. And I want to start off with allowing the panelists to introduce themselves, let the audience know who you are, where you're from, how long have you been doing the work that you're doing, and then we're going to get into some really dynamic questions that the group came up with. So we're going to start off with Miss Mauricia Chapman.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Shatera. Thank you all for inviting me into this space. My name is Mauricia Chapman. I work for the Ryan White Grant Administration that is housed within the Harris County Public Health Department. And our office receives and disperses Ryan White Part A funding to the subrecipients in the Houston eligible metropolitan area, also known as the EMA. Here at the Ryan White Grant Administration, I operate as the Quality Management Development Coordinator, overseeing quality improvement projects, data collection, and assessing client satisfaction with care services. I also make sure to ensure that compliance with Ryan White Grant Administration standards of care, performance measures as outlined by our quality management plan. So to date, I have over 11 and a half years of experience working in both prevention and care, with most of my time being spent on the care side of things. I really enjoy Ryan White. I have worked under Ryan White A, Ryan White B, and Ryan White D at the academic, local, and state government levels in the Midwest and Southern regions. My passion lies within the infrastructure of Part D, or WICI, Women, Infant, Children, and Youth, as I believe that it creates a space for exactly what we're talking about here today. It creates a space to look at women and to look at children who are our future. So daily, I try to remind myself, and I also have it up in my office, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I'm very much a person who operates from the heart. I think we have enough technical folks, we have enough policy-driven folks, but where are the people who are driven by their hearts and driven by just human connection? So I like to believe that I am one of those people, and I like to show people how much I care about them, care about their communities, and then invite them into conversations about what I know. And that is who I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mauricia. Awesome. Dr. Agovi?
Yes, hi, good morning, and thank you for having me on this panel. My name is Manza Agovi, and I am an assistant professor with the JPS Health Network Center for Epidemiology and Healthcare Delivery Research. I've been engaged in HIV work for almost 12 years, worked more with implementation science, and came over here to JPS, where I am the faculty lead for our HIV research program. So I'll keep it short. That's about me.
Awesome. What about Miss Tana?
Thank you, Shatira. Thank y'all for inviting me. My name is Tana Pardia. I am a mother and a grandmother, and also a great grandmother. But also one of the main things that I am a woman living with HIV for 21 years. Why did I start? Why did I want to become a leader and an advocate? After almost dying in 2009 from TB, that was in moving back to Houston in 2010 and not knowing where to go for help, who to go to, and navigating this horrible system that we had was the main reason why I became an advocate, but also a leader. And none of it is about me. It's about my community. It's about my Black sisters that I have made a connection with, which is my family here in Houston, Texas. So I have built a family, but the work itself is not done by me alone. I have my tribe.
Yes, I love it. Got your tribe. I hope we all have a tribe. And I hope if you don't have a tribe by the end of this session, you will develop your tribe, because that's so important. Then we have Miss Kelly Allen Gray. If you can introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, and thank you all. Okay, so Dr. Reynolds, that was real, and you said a lot of the things that I say often, and I just took a girls' trip this weekend with my sisters and my nieces, and we did life lessons up and down Interstate 35, and a lot of that was a part of that life lesson conversation. So thank you for reinforcing what we shared with 3 generations of Hightower descendant women this weekend. And so I am Kelly Allen Gray. I am the Executive Director of AIDS Outreach Center. Very new to this space. I started working at AOC on July 12th. After spending 9 years in public service as a elected official for the city of Fort Worth. And then prior to that, I ran a nonprofit organization that did community revitalization for 10 years. I moved back to the neighborhood that I grew up in, and I just wanted to be a part of some really good things to happen. So I left my great private sector job to come work in the nonprofit arena, and I can't imagine doing anything any different. Coming into this space, my sister-in-law, who passed in 2018, in 1996, when I met my late husband, his sister had been diagnosed with HIV. And so walked that walk with her every single day, from being very healthy to very sick, to participating here at AOC, however it was that she needed us to participate to support her in her journey. And so this is not new to me, being in this arena, but I've been on a different side. I was the family member, and now it looks very different being on the side where I'm actually responsible for making sure that our clients receive great care. So that's who I am, and that's what I do. And let me tell you, it has been an amazing few months here in this space. And one of your slides talked about what happens when the person, when your boss does not look like you, or you're the person who is not in leadership. Well, let me tell you what happens when you are the person who looks like you and you are in leadership. You lose 13 people. That's what happens.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Thank each of you for talking about who you are, and also how you kind of came into the HIV field and what you do in the HIV field as well. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about leadership. And Kelly, you kind of hit on our next discussion topic as it relates to Black women in leadership. And I want to ask you ladies, how do you navigate the ladder of leadership? And if we could start off with Dr. Agobi, how do you navigate the ladder of leadership?
I think just keeping a growth mindset and being open to learning whatever opportunities that life presents you. When I look back, my strategy along the growing in leadership has been just collecting experiences. And I do share, I would mention that 2 of my mentors are online. They joined the call and they look nothing like me. So I do identify with what Dr. Reynolds said. Don't focus on that. If you want to do the work, the work is there to be done. So I think I've always maintained, or I try to maintain, a growth mindset, and whatever opportunity I get, sort of approach it from the perspective of what can I learn from this person? Because we all can learn something, and learning never stops. Learning is a lifelong journey. So that's been, yeah.
Yes, we're all lifelong learners. We're always going to learn something new. What about you, Tana? How do you navigate the leadership ladder?
When I first moved back to Houston from San Antonio, I became a patient mentor at Thomas Street. That was my first start. And then I was asked, did I want to take a Project Leap class that Ryan White gives every year? And I did that. But the main thing was really, I sat there and just listened and learned. And from there, I am one of the co-founders for Positive Women's Network, Greater Houston, now Texas chapter, which Dallas-Fort Worth is a part of that statewide chapter. And I also sit on the board of directors for Positive Women's Network. So my ladder keeps growing. And in 2020, I was the Ryan White chair. So my leadership ladder grows, but my education never stops. My community never, ever stops, because whatever it is that I need to learn, I need to find out, I need to be in those rooms. So meaningful involvement means being in those rooms, being uncomfortable, being not welcomed as a Black woman, because I hear so much the data, it doesn't look like us, but it might not look like us, but I'm here. I need this information. So I'm pushing those barriers to the max because my Black women, my Black sisters need a voice. And I speak for the ones that cannot speak for themselves. None of this is about me.
Yeah. What about you, Ms. Gray? I know you're in this leadership role, and we actually got a question in the chat saying you lost 13 people. How has that impacted what you're doing, or even you climbing that leadership ladder?
So for me, I spend a lot of time listening. So let me tell you, when I came through the door, when this opportunity was presented to me after losing my election in June, which was really the best thing that could have ever happened to me. If you don't, just ask God for something. He's going to give it to you, and he may not give it to you the way that you want it, but he's going to give it to you. And when he lays out the plan, you're like, oh my gosh, that was exactly what I needed. And so what I did prior to coming here was I had spent, even before my interview process, as I was going through it, I just spent all of this time just trying to understand AOC, what was going on, just from looking at everything. I'd done all of this research. And so I walked through the door literally in the process of my interview. And I said, I'm not sure if you really want to ask me questions, because I just have 20 pages of questions that I want to ask you all about what's happening in the organization. And so when I came, I started doing these one-on-ones with each and every employee. And I spent an hour or better with each one of them talking, trying to just understand, who you are, what you do in the organization, what you like about the organization, what you don't like about the organization, what can you change? If you had, just a blank sheet of paper, what would you change? What I realized is that I made a lot of people very uncomfortable. For one, because I was listening. For two, I was asking questions. And then for three, I had a plan. I didn't just ask you a question, listen to your answer, and then not going to do anything about it. I was creating this plan. And so as a part of the creation of this plan, as we are moving forward, it just made a lot of people uncomfortable. The people who were most uncomfortable were people who did not look like me, who did not look like us. This was very different for them. And it wasn't personal. It wasn't personal at all. I just wanted to be there for the clients that we serve. And so of the 42 people that I had conversations with, 35 of those people said, we don't treat our clients well. Our clients look like us. Our clients look like you and me, and they don't have a space here. They don't feel comfortable here. So for me, it was creating a culture, working to create a culture where when you came through the door, regardless of who you are, we spoke to you. We learned your name. We invited you back. We hosted a party, and we had a parking lot full of people that was community and clients and employees, trying to create a culture. So recreate a better culture, out with the old, in with the new, and this is how we're going to do it. So it has been in this space, being able to use everything that I have learned the last 20 years of being a person who was sitting at the table, who a lot of times was the only person who would say, hey, did you forget I'm Black? Did you forget that I'm sitting here? Did you really just say that? And then there's other Black people who are sitting at the table who say absolutely nothing, being unapologetic about who I am and recognizing that I got elected to use my voice for people who needed their voices to be heard. So that just continues to roll over and to roll over. I've been really fortunate. I haven't worked in the private sector in better than 25 years. I've worked for myself, so I've had to figure out how to hustle to eat. And when you have to learn how to hustle to eat, you just don't have time for that foolery. And so that rolls into a lot of the things that I do. I don't suffer fools well. And I'm here. I'm here for the people that I serve. I was there for my 250,000 constituents that I served when I represented city council on a council district, and the over a million people who live in the city of Fort Worth. So there comes a space. You find your space in that, and you find your voice. And then you have people who are around you who are honest with you, who will tell you, girl, if you don't get over there and sit down and shut up, listen to what I'm saying, stop talking for just a moment. But that's the good thing about being a leader. My other thing that I want to leave with is that you can't lead and not bring people with you. You cannot be in this space and not bring somebody with you, regardless. That is what we are here for. And so it's about lifting up people, and we have to be able to lift people up. So that's it.
Definitely. And that's a good segue into kind of our next discussion, as far as we hear when we hear about Black women, we hear we're strong, we're resilient, right? And sometimes we don't want to be. Sometimes we want to, like Dr. Reynolds said, sometimes we just want to be a regular old person, wake up and not have any responsibilities. How do you all navigate some of the challenges with being a Black woman in leadership, and trying to be resilient in those spaces that you're working in? And we'll start off with Ms. Chapman. What are some of the challenges, and how do you navigate through those challenges?
So to be completely honest, I am just now starting to experience some of those challenges. So I was listening to Dr. Reynolds and some of the other panelists. I actually was fortunate enough to get into this career through the leadership of Black people. So everyone I knew was Black. The principal investigators were Black. The project officers were Black. All of the leaders were people of color. And so now I am experiencing a dynamic shift where that shift does not look like that. And so what I'm trying to do to navigate that is to practice what I preach. So I definitely believe in cultural competency. I think that we have a false idea as to what cultural competency is. I think we think that it is an end result, and it's not. It is a continuum. It is a constant continuum that you're on. And you may go up 2 notches and then you may come down a notch. So with that, I try to practice cultural competency and how I align myself with the culture, right? Being the majority culture. What are their thoughts? What are their goals? What are their visions? To actually hear what it is that they're bringing to the table, and then seeing where I can implement my own thoughts and my own strategies as a Black woman, as a Black woman from an urban inner city community, with some of the jargon that we're aware of. Where does it fit into the alignment of the system that they've already created? I would say that is probably how I try to navigate it.
Yeah, awesome. What about you, Dr. Reynolds? You're on mute.
Repeat the question again.
So we're talking about resiliency, and what are some of the challenges that you didn't expect in the work that you're doing?
I would say the challenges that I didn't expect, back to what I said earlier about so many of the services and available funding, the majority of the funding being funneled to men and gay men, as if the epidemic among women almost didn't exist sometimes, it seems. Even now, when you look at different, out right now, present day, it's hard getting a prep available for women. We shouldn't, and in my opinion, we shouldn't still be in this tug of war that we are in to have prep available for women, to have marketing to women. If you look at all of the media, it's mostly male relationships. And it's hard to do. And in 2021, I don't even think that should be an issue. It shouldn't even be gender-based as it seems to be. So I think that's one of the main challenges that just kind of threw me and took me by surprise.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Dr. Agobi, would you like to add on to that question?
Yeah, so challenges that I didn't expect is a lot. When I finished grad school, I went to work in Namibia for 4 years, and I would say that grad school doesn't prepare you for everything in the real world.
Mhm.
And so that's one thing to keep in mind. You can't learn everything in the classroom. And over the years, one of the things that I've also had to, guard against is imposter syndrome. It creeps up every now and then, where you question yourself about, can you do this? Are you really here? And you really have to work hard to guard against that. And another challenge is I work in the field of research, and so there's always you get to hear no a lot. And so being able to build that tough skin and know that when being able to accept critical feedback, that as I mentioned earlier on, that keeping a growth mindset, that whatever hard stops you come to, is what you learn from it and what experiences you can gather from that. And it's not personal, it's to make you better, it's to make you grow. So
Awesome. So at the beginning of this year, I posted something on my Facebook page, and it said, I'm gonna walk away or scoot back from some of these tables. And that was my way of saying I need to implement some self-care into my life, because I was feeling, very burnt out, at being, like Dr. Reynolds said, being on all these committees. They're saying the same thing on every committee, and you've been on these committees for almost 10 years, and you're like, okay, this is like a hamster running in a wheel. Why are we talking about the same thing over and over? So I was really committed to, I'm going to step away, let other people lead, let other people take on some of these responsibilities. I don't have to be at every single table as I thought I should have been. And I backed away a little bit. So that was in January. I posted that, and this is November. So I've stepped away from a few leadership capacities. But I know you ladies experience burnout. How do you navigate your burnout? How do you recharge yourself and still stay involved and still have that uplifting tribe? And how do you get back to what your passion and your purpose is for the work that you're doing in your leadership roles and the work that you are doing right now? So let's start with Tana. How do you navigate your burnout?
You know what? That's a great question, because I'm gonna tell you, 2021 has been a rough year. But at the same time, when I think about it, I also said I was gonna pull back, but being a part of Positive Women's Network and the Texas Strike Force, things that have happened for low-income communities, Black and Brown, the time of meetings that are geared around the time that most of us are at work. These meetings lasting 3 and 4 hours, not being considerate of people's time, because when we think about an advocate and a leader in the community, we're not thinking that we're coming on our time. This is our time to stay engaged in order to be that voice for community. And I call it, and this is how I call it internal institutional racism, period. I call all of it institutional racism because the time of the meetings, things that are being done to Black and Brown communities, especially women, things that have happened this year, and the Texas Strike Force being a fierce advocate, but being a fierce part of the community from advocates living with HIV and our allies. I can't sit back, but what I can do on Friday, I can cut my phone off until Monday morning and just sit back with my family and my grandkids and just chill.
Listen, I hear you. And sometimes you have to just cut the phone off, shut the computer down, and yeah, and I'm sure the panelists know I was just in Jamaica, and that was my way of trying to implement some self-care. So, what about you, Mauricia? What's your burnout navigation methods?
I would say boundaries for me is number one. I am really big on boundaries. I'm really big on my private time, being my private time, and doing things that excite me and that excite me as an individual outside of the work that I do, right? Because the work that we do, for many of us, it goes around the clock. And so you have to be really, really intentional, as Tana said, about taking that time. And for me, I like to do things that make me feel alive. I like to do things that are risk-taking, right? So zip lining, hot air balloons, motorcycle rides, jumping out of a plane. It reminds me that I'm alive. It reminds me, to take a deep breath of oxygen, right? And it rejuvenates me to start again. Going back to the boundaries, I just set really clear boundaries. When I established friendships, I want it to be a friendship. I want it to be fun. I want to, I don't always want to talk about work. We have designated times for that, and meet me during one of those designated times. Outside of that, you're going to get Mauricia, who loves adventure. And I think that's how I maintain my burnout.
What about you, Kelly?
So I love my garden. I am a gardener, and let me tell you, I'm also, it took me a long time to understand the power of two letters, and that's N and O, to just say no. Sometimes we could just say no and make our lives so much easier. And so I learned the power of no. And so I can say no a lot, but for people who really know me, I have this really cool front porch, and I live in a historic house, and I have made my front porch the party porch. So if you get invited to the porch has whiskey. The porch has really good wine. Yes. The porch has really good food. The porch has, lots of crazy conversations and music, and there's some dancing. I see Shay on here, who just joined, came back to our organization. I like a good party. And so I will throw my own party, just as my way of relax, relate, and releasing, and invite people over, and we just have a good time, and there's nothing else. I also love to read, so I can wake up at 2 and 3 in the morning and just roll over, hit my phone, read a few pages, but it's just about unwinding, letting loose, and calling it a day. But for me, it's my front porch. I'm all in.
I love that.
Come to the front porch. It goes down on the front porch.
Invite me to the porch party.
I got you. And it's getting cool now, so I can so we can light a fire, on the front porch. So yeah, the front porch.
All right, sounds like some cut up gonna happen on that porch, ladies. So we have a question from someone in the audience, and it says, what do you perceive to be your anchor as it relates to the leadership? Because the support is not always present. So what do you believe, what do you perceive to be your anchor as it relates to leadership?
I can take that. I think one of the things that has been really beneficial to me is having mentors, and I think Dr. Reynolds mentioned that the importance of having mentors for different things. So I have people that I talk to when it comes to, personal life mentorship, or maybe my spiritual life mentorship, or even career wise. So you have different people that you go to, and that I cannot overstate just how important that has been to keeping me anchored, because there are times when you get very tunnel visioned, and being able to have somebody that has been through that same experience that can share and give you additional perspective. It's like, oh, why was I worrying about that in the first place? And so for me, that would be one of the ways that I use.
Anyone else have any ways how they anchor that leadership?
I have to say, she's my mentor, but she's more than just a mentor. She's my sister. Benita keeps me grounded. She'll tell me, quick, come on, sis. You can't just fly off the handle at everything. You have to, and Dr. Reynolds said this earlier, you have to pick what battles that you want to bring into your space. So I am very cautious as to how I react to some things. I'm not going to say I'm always perfect, because I'm not. But Benita Ray keeps me grounded. I have to say Crystal Townsend keeps me grounded. I have a army of women that keep me grounded on everyday basis, so.
Yeah.
Shatira, I want to just add to that, because they're absolutely right. And then I want to add just this one piece, prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer. And I have an amazing network of women who, when any one of us has an issue, there's always one of us who just starts the prayer, and everyone falls in line. And then, it's okay, sis, go be great, go, handle your business, whatever. But it all stems around that prayer. Someone in that group, someone in your girl group has to be the prayer. Someone in there has to be, faith driven, because you cannot do this on your own. You have to have, whoever it is that you serve, whatever it is that grounds you. I'm a preacher's kid, so I'm all in for God. So don't take that personal, but there has to be that grounding. Because you can have women all day long, but if those women aren't walking that same walk or understand, what it is that you're going through and as a part of their own lives, then it doesn't really help you. And so you have your girl group has to really understand what's happening, and they have to be experiencing those same things, because sometimes you get haters in your girl group too. So that's the truth. Come
on, you better speak it. Sometimes you gotta know when to remove some people from your inner circle as well, because it's real in our circles. Anyone else want to share to that question? What's your perception of the anchor as it relates to leadership?
I will just add quickly, because Kelly mentioned prayer. If you know what your call is, even if you don't like it, because I've asked the Lord plenty of times, why this one? I could have done many things. But if you know what it is, just remember it. You might not always like it, but the gifts and calls are without repentance. So if that's your lot, it's your lot, and you have to stand in it. That's why we need the other things around us to hold us up sometimes. Sometimes it's just for you to do. It may not be for everybody to do. But if it is for you to do, recognize that, embrace it, and then work it out.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, we are winding down, ladies, almost at 12:30. And I want to invite our attendees to ask any questions to the panelists. If they have any, you can put them in the chat, or you can, let's see. We have a nice little crowd. So if you would like to unmute yourself and ask the panelists a question, you're welcome to do that as well.
I'm gonna take the opportunity to unmute. I'm just amazed to be in this room with you guys. So thank you all for sharing. Monza mentioned it very briefly, but it's something that I struggle with as a future leader is imposter syndrome. So I'm curious from the rest of the panelists if anyone else has struggled with that and what that looks like for them.
I'll start. Yes, I've struggled with that, particularly from being in rooms and around tables with people who don't look like me a lot of the time. But one of my mentors told me something probably 20 years ago, and to this day, I'll follow it. If you're ever in a conference room, sit across from the window, sit across from a mirror, because you need to be able to see yourself. Because when you can see yourself, it reminds you of who you are. And it gets you out of your head of, oh, I shouldn't be here and I'm scared and I don't know what to say. So if you're afraid to sit with your back to the door, that's a whole other thing. But when I have to sit around a big table, I find a place where I can see my reflection so that I know to sit up straight and look like I'm supposed to be there, even when I don't feel like it. So that's a tip to take with you, and I'll let somebody else answer. If
I
somebody
love
else
being
has
in the
answer.
room. I love being in the room and be the only person now sometimes because I learn more. I know where I'm sitting there and I'm taking notes on what strategy I need to come up with to bring the next person with me. Because in order to have a movement, in order to be an organizer, you must bring other people with you, but you also have to come up with that strategy on to be that fierce, that voice, but also just being who you are. I don't have to pretend. I am transparent. I believe in everything that I do. And my father taught me if I'm ashamed of something, I shouldn't be doing it. And my mother, who passed away in March, told me never, ever give up. You keep fighting.
Can I add really quickly? I think one thing that I've become more aware of is to also share experiences of failure. That all of us that you see up here, it's not been a straight journey without failure. And it's okay to make mistakes in the beginning, as long as you learn from that and move on. And so I think it's important for all of us to acknowledge that. I have failed, had several false starts, but I've learned from that, and I think I would not be here without my mistakes. So.
Thank you, ladies, for sharing. Do anyone else have any questions for our panelists? I'm getting a lot of applause, ladies.
Hi, my name is Ashley. I have a question for the panelists. What would you say your drive was from the start to where you are now?
I'll start. So my drive was in the beginning research, and we were looking at the prevalence of HIV on Black campuses. And at that time, I happened to be a student at an HBCU, and this was something new to me. This was something that I wasn't familiar with, but the research was showing me that it was affecting those in my dorm room, those that I was going to parties with every day. And so I wanted to play a part in that. And then what keeps me going today is the fact that when I show up in so many rooms, there are a lot of majority folks. And I think that that's what keeps me going in the field, because I want our community to be able to celebrate the end of HIV the way that other communities have been able to celebrate it, to celebrate viral suppression the way other communities have been able to celebrate it. And so I think that's what keeps me going and to date.
You know what keeps me going? After going through intimate partner violence, finding out my diagnosis after that, but also drug addiction and my mental state. My mental state told me that I could not be the person that I am today. But that's not true. Until I came to grips with the mental state and accepting that I was a woman living with HIV, I could not move forward. And, you know, I just really never thought I had a voice, but I educated myself. I found women that were just like me because I had never seen women that were living with HIV, or that embraced me because I had a fear of letting women into my life. But today, I'm building the relationship with women, but also being able to trust and love another female in a way that a sister has enhanced me as a woman, but also it has enhanced me to be the leader and the advocate that I am today, because I did not see myself anywhere in any room or just anybody that could connect with me that went through the same things that I went through. So my journey has been a blessing, and I have to give that all to God, because that's who has saved me from destruction to being the woman that I am today.
Awesome. So as we have it's a really interesting question that we have in the chat, and I want to close out with this particular question with the answer from the panelists. I think people who are in rural communities are somewhat isolated. What would you say are the best ways for them to be connected to you as Black women leaders when you think about rural communities?
I would say if you are in a rural community, or even a community that does not have a depth of services for women living with HIV, that does not have a good prevention program or education program or support service, to identify things like this that you can connect with virtually. The Grace Project has a weekly support group on Zoom. And we took some time getting people logged in Zoom and making sure that they knew how to log on and call in and what have you. But every Thursday at 6 o'clock, 7 if you're on the East Coast, 4 if you're on the West Coast. If you're in the country with a Wi-Fi connection or a phone, you could call in and talk with other women and get the support that you need. And so for people in areas that don't have it, I recommend staying connected with things like this, and finding out when is the next thing like this, and inviting more people, do it in a watch party or what have you, so that the people in your area can also experience this type of a setting. I know everybody's not tech savvy, but it might take a few extra steps, but I believe we can get there if we take the time to do it.
And we like to leave off these series with a charge. And I think Dr. Reynolds hit on it. The charge really for all of our attendees, our participants today, is to build your tribe, build your support system. You need that. We want you to go out. And not even just build it, evaluate the one that you may even have now. Reassess that. You may need to take some people out of that circle and add some different people to that circle, or have mentors or people you can connect with in different areas. As we talked about, spirituality, career wise, personal wise. We as Black women leaders, we need to make sure that we keep that support system, that connection intact, because it helps us in the long run as we help other people do in the work that we do from day in and day out. And I want to leave everyone off with this quote from Ava DuVernay: "Be passionate and move forward with gusto every single hour, every single day until you reach your goal." And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out to the Achieving Together Black Women's Affinity Group that's sponsored by the Achieving Together Ending HIV in Texas Plan, as well as the Texas Black Women's Health Initiative. We are tuning out. And we also want to say thank you to our UT team. We know we would not be working with them in the upcoming year. They have been so instrumental in helping us have these dialogues and put these dialogues together and promote them. And they're always behind the scenes of Zoom and doing our tech work. And we're going to really miss working with them. We want to just thank them publicly for all the work that they have done with the Achieving Together project that we've been doing over the last 8 years or so in the state of Texas. We are really excited, and please believe we're going to continue on with the work, particularly with the Black Women's Affinity Group. So with that being said, thank you so much for coming out, and be on the lookout for our schedule for next year, because we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep these conversations going as it relates to Black women and HIV in Texas. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your Monday, as well a wonderful rest of your week.